The Graphic Histories Podcast.
I got bit by a radioactive bug. I tried an experimental drug. Went up for a stroll on a gamma testing range. I found an enchanted hurricane. I made a serum that made me small. I modified the serum so it would make me tall. Radioactive isotope in my eyes. Dying alien helped me accessorize. I gained the proportion and strength of a spider. Now I'm invincible and I can fly. I lost my sight, my other senses were heightened. I'm gonna put on my pajamas and go fight crime.
Hey there, and welcome to the Graphic Histories Podcast. My name is Andre Mayette, your podcast host. Big thanks to Uka the Mock for our theme song, Superpowers. And big thanks to you, gentle listener, for tuning in once again to another action-packed, fun-filled show. Today we talk with Barbara Slate. Very great conversation with a very talented, innovative, and charming lady who had created some really cool projects for DC, for Marvel, and put stuff out there for women in an era when books for girls weren't so big in comics. And did some really neat stuff, including creating Angel Eyes for DC, going on to do Yuppies from Hell for Marvel, working on Beauty and the Beast, Barbie, some Pocahontas, some of those Disney licensed characters, going on to teach making graphic novels and to go on and write a book about that. And is currently working on her own autobiography that she's doing in graphic novel form. It's a great conversation, and I had a really, really good time chatting with Barbara, and can't thank her enough for being so freeing with her time. On the home front, things are busy. I know we had a couple weeks off, as I normally don't like to do that. It just every once in a while happens that, some people cancel, some scheduling stuff doesn't line up. And, as I'm just a lowly podcaster in a sea of content trying to get out there and get my stuff out there, sometimes, this happens. So I unfortunately don't have the resources to have a huge catalog or backlog. And unfortunately, I'm not so popular that people are clamoring to get on the show. Sometimes you got to, talk to folks and coordinate schedules and get them on here. So I work as best I can, and I'm working at it. But we are back with a new episode. Sorry about the brief hiatus, as I called it, because, I like to try to keep a new episode a week, and it sucks when you don't meet those expectations. So working on it. Davin's out there waving the flag, trying to get guests as well, as am I. But, we're all busy. We all have lives. And maybe that'll be something this will evolve into. It'll be when I can do it kind of thing. But for now, I'm happy to do it weekly and get as many episodes out as I can with a lot of great creators, including Barbara. It's funny because I talked to Barbara a little bit about, she worked on the New Kids in the Block comic, which I remember having the digest version of as a kid. I think I must have grabbed it at a yard sale somewhere or found it in a box at a flea market. And for some reason I really dug it as a kid. It just seemed kind of Archie-like in that it was, DC sort of little slice of life stories with these characters, none of which I was super, I wouldn't say I was a massive New Kids in the Block fan when I was a child. I certainly was aware of them and knew the songs that were played in the radio, but I didn't know who Donnie was compared to who Jordan was or any of those other characters. So, but the book itself, just on its own merits, as just being a fun little book about a boy band, I guess. As a kid, I thought was interesting. Maybe it was the art style. I don't know. Something about it drew me to it. I don't think it was the fact that it was the New Kids in the Block. But Barbara had written those and worked on that. And, just some innovative, really cool work. And the book Angel Eyes that she worked on for DC, I didn't realize how innovative and sort of transgressive it was for the time period. And I'm really hoping you can track down a collection of that, because I feel like it'd be something really interesting to read. And historically, something when you look at the history of graphic novels and their impact on society, their impact on what they've addressed, I think that one would really fall into that category as something that is a milestone, or at least a touchstone, and needs to be recognized for being what it was, and for drawing a lot of attention to something that wasn't discussed in comics in general, but also women comics, but things that were related to reality. And we get into a good conversation about that, about what offended readers at that time period compared to what was fine in superhero books. If you have a book dealing with drug use or abortion in a book that seemingly was designed towards women, then that was the worst possible thing you could do, apparently, when it's fine for Speedy to be addicted to drugs and, Green Lantern's girlfriend to get shoved into a fridge. That's all fine. But, if you deal with any real issues that pertain to actual women and the real life problems of the world, that's too much. We can't deal with that. So we do chat about that. Barbara's so kind in giving with her information. So great chat and a great conversation. So let's just get into it. I mean, hey, you've had to wait 2 weeks for a new episode. Why not give it to you now? So here it is, my conversation with the amazing Barbara Slate.
The boxer, and I thought, well, maybe that's you.
Oh, I'm a professional wrestler. It's kind of the similar thing.
Same thing.
Yeah, okay.
It's
Yeah,
like saying an artist and a writer are the same thing, right?
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I guess in my mind the worlds seem very different. But one is kind of more performative and one is more of a sport, like an actual sport, I guess. But yeah, it's I've been doing that for many, many years. So yeah, if it was
And
me in a ring, that's definitely me.
and that's all your collection back there?
Oh yeah. This is my home office. I'm a big fan of Gremlins, the Gremlins movies. So
Okay,
I
yeah,
just I got a few of them there. There's another one
yeah.
over there, and
I noticed that my wall is blank.
yeah.
I have things all over, but where I am is blank. Anyway, I'm
Yes.
not putting anything there.
No, do you find it like? Do you have when it comes to like? Is this your office you're in, like in your home? Or?
Yes,
Yes.
but we sold our house
Ah,
6 months ago,
hmm.
and it sold almost overnight.
Wow.
And so I didn't have time to to realize that I was leaving. And
Hmm.
so it's 6 months being out of there, and now we're moving into a new house that we just closed on 2 days ago.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. So everything is I was going to say disorganized, but it really isn't because when you pack, you have everything in boxes. And I was
Mm,
smart enough not to unpack a lot of stuff.
mm,
So it's still in boxes. But going through everything and just deciding on what I'm going to throw out and what I'm going to keep,
yeah.
within a week, I'm like, oh, why did I throw that out?
Oh, really? Oh, no. As you're making me think, because I was thinking, like, even myself, like, I'll be 40 this year, but I look around at, like, because I have a library in my house that's just full of books, and it's, like, getting really crammed and, like, a bunch of records and, like Blu-rays, and I'm just like, someday I'm going to have to, like, pare this down, or, like, when I get a little older, I'm probably not going to want to have this much stuff.
Are you married?
I am.
Oh, okay. So your wife is okay with you collecting all this stuff and having your man cave. No complaints there.
No, thankfully we have a large home, like a large. It's just the two of us. We don't have any children. So the house we got before sort of COVID and everything. I live in Nova Scotia, Canada. So we have like the housing market kind of blew up a little bit after COVID when everybody was trying to move to away from the bigger cities and get out to more rural areas like ours. So the houses got really expensive, but we kind of bought just before all that happened. So we got like a pretty large house, and she has her own office for her work in another room. I have a room that's a library. We still have a nice bedroom, a spare bedroom. So there's like lots of space in the house. Um,
Isn't that great?
yeah.
Our house, we were supposed to downsize and we upsized. We found this house that was extraordinary with a beautiful view.
Mm,
And I realized having moved from one place to another with these beautiful homes with white walls, as much as I love the white walls, I didn't have any place to look at birds
mm,
and animals that my old house had, and I missed it.
mm.
So we found this amazing house with beautiful windows and just it's magnificent. And yesterday I was there, or the day before, and there was this giant heron that just
Oh.
flew right over and landed and posed for me. I said, "Thank you." So it's remarkable.
Oh, that's lovely. When nature gives you something like that, I was like, I live really close to, there's a kind of in Nova Scotia, if you know, look at a map, there's like the bay in the middle, the Bay of Fundy, which is like, has these crazy tides and stuff, and I live right on it. So often there's a nice walking trail that I'll take along it, or I'll bike along it sometimes. And a hawk like followed me one day on my bike. It was like swooping around me like this, and I was like, "What a gift!" Like, you don't see that very often, but it just followed me for like a little while, kind of weaving in and out of the path I was in. It was amazing.
It's wonderful.
Yeah, when it
It's really wonderful when that happens.
Yeah, nature every once in a while kind of I don't know, I feel like when moments like that happen, it kind of makes you feel like you're a part of something bigger in a way. Not that I really have a belief system in any sense, but the idea that like, the nature, you're sort of a part of this bigger nature. It's kind of
Yeah.
comforting when moments like that happen, I find.
Yes, I get very teary when moments like that happen because it's so rare,
Mm.
so special for just you and the bird, you know.
Yeah, yeah. The bird could probably care less, but for you, you're like, oh my God,
The bird may
Yeah.
care very
Yeah.
much. The
Yeah,
bird
that's
may be
true.
saying, God, you should have seen this human I was playing with
Yeah,
today.
that's true. That's true. I probably look a little more unique than some of the other humans that he sees running through that area. So,
Yeah.
that's cool. So, where does your new home at? Where are you calling in from?
It's in Kinderhook, upstate.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
it's actually the town is called Valatia, but we moved from Hudson, New York,
Hmm.
and uh, and then we moved to East Hampton for 3 months, and where I used to live. I used to
Mm.
live in Sag Harbor, actually, and in the city, and it's we've been moving a lot. I'm ready to just settle down and look out the window.
Yeah. Well, was New York always home for, or New York State always home for you, or?
I was born in St. Louis, Missouri,
Oh, okay.
and we moved to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and I went to school in Pittsburgh, and then I got on that. Are we recording now?
Yes, yep, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, okay, fine. Okay, so I'm assuming that
We're in it.
we're it's happening.
That's
Okay,
right. I generally try to like, I don't really do a style where I just ask you kid questions. It's more this like
okay.
a conversation. So I try to
I
discern.
see. So you don't introduce me.
No, no, well, I'll do that. I'll do that at a separate point in the episode. So that,
Okay, so here I am.
yeah,
Yay!
yeah.
And there you are. Yeah, so yeah, we moved to Pennsylvania, and then when I graduated art school, I went to New York for Fame and Fortune
Ah, well, when
and
did?
found neither.
Oh, I don't know about that.
A little bit of
Yeah.
fame and a little bit of fortune.
Well, growing up, were comics always a part of your childhood, or is that something that you had as long as you remember?
The funny pages. I
Ah,
remember, reading the funny pages because they were so colorful. And I don't know if I was so much into the dialogue as much as I was into the beauty of them and how amazing they were in that newspaper, that all black and white newspaper. And then suddenly you open it up and there's those great colors. Of course, that didn't last long.
mm,
Very few newspapers now have funny pages, but that's what I was into. And then I read a lot of Betty and Veronica at camp. And so
ah.
I would say that was my first foray into comics.
Was it as deep as like finding, I guess, stories that were centered around women, or is it just a matter of finding something like Betty and Veronica spoke to you in some other reason?
Well, at that time, Betty and Veronica
Ah,
weren't
fair enough.
exactly,
Yeah.
they were fighting over Archie.
Yeah, good
I can
point.
say they were liberated women, but
Yeah.
they were just fun characters. And it was mostly my friends saying, are you a Betty or are you a Veronica?
Mm.
That was the girl thing. I don't know if you know that, but it was a very cultured thing that it was part of the culture if you're a Betty or Veronica. And I am continued to be a Betty with always the desire to be Veronica.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like that's probably the better way to go, I suppose. I don't know. I guess you had to make a decision between the two, but it's funny that you still like that conversation hasn't really changed. It's just the people that you are the you or the you have, but like the idea that you still need to fit in a box between two people is always kind
Yeah.
of the eternal debate between kids.
Yeah, I don't know if that's part of the culture today when the kids read Betty and Veronica. I don't know if that's a question they ask.
I assume it's something else now. It's probably some pop singer and some other pop singer or
Yeah, who
something.
would you rather go to bed with, Betty
Yeah.
or Veronica? All different generation. I mean, I never
Yeah.
even thought of that, anyway.
Well, I
Yeah.
feel like culturally, like at one point, it was like Ginger or Marianne, like or some other thing that was in the core of the pop culture at the time. That was probably the debate between girls, and then probably like the debate you mentioned between the guys, probably. But yeah, whether it's remained Betty and Veronica, I guess maybe because of like Riverdale and other ways, kind of bringing it into the back to back to a popular.
Yeah, that whole
I
Riverdale thing that's on TV. Is it? I don't know if it's still on
no,
TV.
no, I didn't care for it really. I watched like one episode and I was like, this is not for me.
I don't know who those characters were.
Yeah, that's what I said. I said it feels like somebody wrote a teen drama show and just thought, let's just make it an Archie show and just give them the same names, but it had nothing else to do with anything else besides
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
I was very upset about that actually.
Yeah, did you feel like it sort of robbed the sort of the innocence of the
Yeah,
original
yeah.
cartoon?
I did. I wrote over 100 Betty and Veronica stories. I called it Betty and Veronica because I really concentrated on the girls as being friends,
Hmm.
such opposite characters, and I wanted to keep. I'm very conscious when I do work for girls that I don't do this girls fighting over guys.
Yeah, it's pretty tired
Just
trope.
it's just really not good for girls, I
No.
think. And so I mean they could both love him, but anyway, I didn't like them fighting over him, but I did enjoy doing comics about about their friendship. And it was surprising how many comics you could get without Archie being there.
Yeah. Well,
But
it's
later on, I introduced Archie kind of like as a separate character,
mhm.
and I started enjoying doing Archie. But it took me a long time, plus arguments with my editor, like, why do these girls even care about this redheaded C+ students? I mean, they were pretty smart.
Well, it's a pretty rich universe. Like to say that it needs, I guess Archie's generally at the forefront of most of it, but it's always kind of funny how to me how they every once in a while he sort of pops up in some way or the universe pops up in some way that they try to like make it more modernize it like when they did the Life with Archie book or they did the like Archie meets Predator and Archie meets like all these different characters.
I know.
It just seems like
I
a
have to
very
say, with the when I was writing them, I was a purist.
Mm.
Anything that took them out of that lovely Riverdale 50s environment where everybody was had a intact family. There were no divorces, and they really it was just a really simpler, lovely time
yeah.
in comics in that universe. And so anything that took it out of that was horrible to me. I hated it.
Well, there's so much of that. Like I constantly kind of rally against like to make it into a bigger conversation, like, this need to make every superhero thing or every comic thing some dark, gritty exploration of how horrible humans are to each other. Like there's enough of that in the world. Sometimes it's nice to have a pleasant, happy, hopeful version of a hero or a story, like we can
I
we
think
can
so.
have yeah.
Yeah.
I think the world's full with enough. Like, and I love a lot of those stories too. But I think there's room for both. Not everything needs to be, you know, some dark, gritty procedural with violence and everything else. Like sometimes having a fun book that's reminiscent of a simpler time is welcoming too and comforting.
Yeah.
Yeah, Archie almost seems like the measuring stick for being like this was when going back to a pleasanter story. So when you have him becoming a zombie or something and eating people, it just feels so disjointed from the source material
Yeah.
and just some shock way
Yeah.
to kind of make
I,
it different.
yeah. And I never read them. So I'm just talking out of my ass, but I mean maybe it's wonderful, but I don't like it. I like to keep my girls right where they are in Riverdale
Yeah.
and having that lovely life where they go to school and you know
Yeah.
Mr. Witherby is the principal and that kind of thing. It's
Yeah.
fun.
I remember when I watched like the first episode of the show, the Riverdale show, it was like Archie was having an affair with Miss Grundy, and I was like, what is this? Like what am I watching? Miss Grundy's like,
Archie was having an affair with Miss Grundy.
yeah, and she wasn't Miss Grundy. She was like some woman that took her identity. So she was like in her 30s or something, Archie would have
Oh,
been.
don't please, no more.
Yeah, okay.
I don't want to hear more.
No worries. It's fine.
That image will never go away.
Yeah.
I
Well, at one point
purposely
they,
avoided it, and now,
yeah, yeah. Now you have more reason to avoid it. Well, at some point they like show her ID and it was like an old lady. So like it was she had stole. It wasn't actually she had stolen Miss Grundy's identity or something. I don't know. But regardless, it was not the show for me.
that's, yeah, and Archie having an affair. I mean, if they kissed in the comic, that was so heart palpitating, just that kiss with the
Yeah.
heart, and that
Oh
was
yeah.
lovely.
Yeah. No, they.
Yeah, it's everything's changed. I know.
Yeah, well, but not not necessarily for the better. I feel like there are certain pockets that certain things should stay in, like in Pleasantville or something. Like this nice little leave Archie to the Archie world. And if you want to do that sort of story, make something new. Why does it have to be Archie? It just doesn't. It feels
Well,
like you.
there's so many things that you can. I mean, I loved writing those stories.
Mm,
It really was all very, it was all very simple,
yeah,
and about personalities, that kind of thing.
and it
And
kind
the
of.
other thing that I loved doing with those two girls was putting them in humiliating situations
Mhm,
where they would do something that was so embarrassing and then find their way out. That was one of my themes of, girls, women, this whole perfection thing
mm,
was something that I really wanted to deal with. And so I thought little girls seeing that these heroes that they admired so much could be in these situations and get out of it and survive well, and learn something from it.
yeah.
So that was something I really worked on.
Nice. Well, like as a kid reading them was that's as like I guess wanting to address that issue as far as what they were interested in and the problems they're getting over and the perfection that sort of society or other people placed in them. Was that something that you felt like growing up that was always kind of heavy on you that you had to address when you got to doing the art yourself?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't tell you how many hours I spent on my hair with the flip on one side and there, and bows, and looking a certain way, and
Mm,
of course being a cheerleader, I was on top of the world.
mm,
So, but there was a lot of perfection, and I see it today too with
mm.
girls.
Yeah. Well, you must have been an interesting student being a cheerleader and also kind of reading comics and getting into that stuff too. Is like because I guess you'd be from the era when well, I guess like funny page comics are kind of different than reading like comic books. But
Very different.
yeah.
But Betty and Veronica were really in camp
Hmm.
because, mothers would send stacks of comics and we used to pass them around. So
Nice.
that was a very big image uh, uh, in my mind of being um, in camp on those horrible beds and reading Betty and Veronica.
Well, you mentioned you went to art school, so I'm guessing that art had some kind of a play, it was an interest with you enough to consider that as a career and to move forward with it.
Well, I was always an artist,
Yeah, okay.
yeah, from when I was young, I was always drawing. And so I writing was not something that I did or thought about ever. But when I started working for actually Marvel, I was considered much more a writer than I was an artist. And for DC, it was both. I'm just trying to think. Yeah, well, for Marvel, I did a lot of drawings too. But the writing for I don't know why, but it just came very natural to me.
Really?
I had no problem writing. The art was always painstaking to do my finishes. I could do quick sketches, but finishes were just exhausting.
Yeah. Well, like I guess when what was your specialty in art school? Did you go in as a painter or just illustrator and
I
what's your
started out as a commercial artist,
okay.
and then airbrush came,
Mm,
and there was no way I could do airbrush. It was a mental block.
mm.
And so I realized that in order to pass, I couldn't. So I switched to fashion, which I had no passion for at all. but I knew that in order to graduate, I would have to pass airbrush for commercial art, and so I switched to fashion,
Wow.
which was a stupid reason. But there are things that I get blocked on, and nothing I can do will change it.
Yeah.
Maybe if I had more years of psychiatry, I could, but I had had it.
I never like I'm a graphic artist. That's my day job, graphic designer. So, but
Oh, well,
I never enjoyed. My instructor in school was big in airbrushing, and it was something I could never really get into. Painting in general was never something I could really, I don't know, penetrate. Yeah, I play with it a little bit just in like a digital format now, but the idea of getting into the airbrush thing, or when I watch people do it, I'm always very impressed, but it's just never something I could really get into either.
yeah, it was just keeping that airbrush. Mine would go spat like that. It was horrible.
Well, did your how were your parents receptive of you going into a career in the arts?
I have a sister who's 13 months older than I am.
Mm.
So my mother gave her the title of being the smart one, which
Oh,
of course wasn't fair
no.
because she could do things faster than I could because she had 13 months on me. So especially in the early development. So she was the one that was designated the smart one, and I was designated the dumb one with all the personality. I know, I know. It's terrible, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
And so when I was drawing, that kind of went into the category of um, being not being so bright because I could
Mm,
draw. And I remember my parents would say, "Oh, thank God she can draw," because that was something that could advance me, I guess.
I guess.
So there I go. I'm going to start crying now. Don't you
Oh,
feel sorry for
oh
me?
no. Well, I can see where that underlaying need for perfection comes from, or that weight of expectation. Yeah, that's terrible. Did your sister end up doing something like is she a
Getting
lawyer or a
married,
doctor? Okay.
getting married,
Yeah.
and she got married very young and stayed married and married a very successful man, which was my mother's goal. And that time in the 50s,
Yeah.
that was what you were brought up to find a man and get married. And not necessarily, my mother really could care less about having children. It was just getting married. And I think she felt like once her girls got married, that she could retire from
Hmm.
motherhood.
No,
And
okay.
so my sister did a very good job, and I was a mess. Going through one guy after another, getting married, getting divorced,
Hmm.
so I did not achieve my mother's goals, but I achieved my own.
Yeah, well, I feel like that's more important. I mean, I guess there's larger conversation to have about parents and their expectations, but it's your life to live, not theirs. So,
Well,
uh,
that's for sure.
yeah, well, so the jump from finishing art school, focused in fashion and getting to Marvel Comics. So how big of a gap was that?
Well, I was 20 and I got on the Greyhound bus and I came to New York. And I it was stepping on. It was a real experience. All the things that they say about New York, for me in the beginning happened. I was getting off the bus with my portfolio, and this sleazy guy with a cigar said, "Hey, baby, you want to be a model?" That kind of thing.
What, just waiting at the bus stop, eh, by the door?
Right,
Yeah.
right at the bus stop.
Wow, wow. Oh.
And so it was very flattering, but
Hmm,
I'm not a model.
hmm.
I mean, maybe it looks as though I could have been, but no, I knew I wasn't a model. So I said, no, thank you. I'm an artist. And then it took a while to find it. Well, no, it didn't take a while to find a job because at that time I opened up the New York Times and there were so many places that were looking for artists
Hmm.
of one sort or another. And I got a job at J.C. Penney as a package designer.
Oh,
And I stayed there for several years. And that was a wonderful experience, actually. But it's funny being a package designer because I switched to fashion,
Mm.
but this was much more commercial. And after about a year, I went to Alex, who is my art director, and I said, you know, why did you choose me of all these people? Because waiting for that interview, the whole lobby was filled with artists with portfolios, and I thought, this is ridiculous. I had no package design experience. I had switched my major. So why I got the job was beyond me. And I said, what was it? Was it the fact that I could, you could see my drawing? I went through this whole thing, and he said it was your big brown eyes. So there was no, and I said, thank you. I mean, back then that was a compliment,
Yeah.
but I did a good job for J.C. Penney, and I
Yeah.
worked there for a long time. But I started getting a little nervous that I was going to be a J.C. Penney lifer,
Uh,
like Miss Hall, who was this woman in the halls that was, it would tell you, don't ride your bicycle, don't do this. I was a little nervous about being a lifer, so
mm.
I started looking for other work, and I found a job at a advertising agency, which I was fired after 1 week.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the guy wanted me there to prove to the art department. I don't know what it was, but they all rebelled and said, we want to raise, we don't want another artist. So that was that. And then where did I go? Oh, I went to the garment center where I worked for these seven leisure suits. Do you remember the leisure suits
Oh, yeah.
in
Yeah.
the 70s?
Yeah.
All different colors, lime green,
Hmm.
all these hideous colors with the great shirts, the colored
Oh,
shirts,
yeah. Yeah.
flowers, and the rolled up sleeves and the cigarette, and it was. So I had seven leisure suit bosses. So I was there for a while, and then
Wow.
um, then uh, worked as a receptionist for a while,
Oh, wow.
which was fun,
Yeah.
but not going anywhere in my career.
Well, yeah, probably not very rewarding, doing and getting the art out, right? I feel like as an artist, you kind of always need to be producing something. I feel like in that world,
But
probably not so much.
my cheerleading skills were there, being a
Mm.
receptionist,
Hmm.
welcoming people. So I kind of liked it.
Hmm.
But I knew that's not why I came to New York to be a cheerleader, actually. So um, then I guess what happened was because of all those experiences, and of course feminism with Gloria Steinem was happening, and so I started seeing things about how really unfair women were treated. And through all my experience too, even in the garments, well, much in the garment center, there were no women executives. And
Mm.
at J.C. Penney, there were a few. That was pretty progressive. But
Mm.
so I started a greeting card line called Ms. Liz. It's cards for the women who speaks their mind.
Mm.
And so it was a very radical thing in the greeting card market because greeting cards were mostly Hallmark and Norcross and American greetings. They were, just sweet cards, and there were a couple that were a little bit out there, but mine was a feminist greeting card, which got a lot of attention.
So did you like go to like a greeting card company with this proposal? Like, or did you start it from the ground up? Like,
I started from the ground up.
so
I
you had to
go
like
to any,
source cards and do all of that yourself? Wow, that's
anybody. It was insane.
really,
And my husband then quit his job to help me out.
yeah.
And, never go into business with your partner.
Mm.
Uh, that's my 2 cents. I guess it works for some people, it didn't work for us.
Yeah.
And so I did that for 9 years. And because it was uh, there were cards like, I know I'm not easy to live with, but you're no bargain either.
Mm.
And if my place is in the home, then get out. You
Wow,
know,
but like this is super innovative for that time period because like that's a lot of cards are like that now. That's like the bulk of them, like
yeah.
so like the fact that you were out there doing these sort of subversive greeting cards at the get-go before that was even an idea is amazing. Like,
Well, thank you. Yes,
yeah.
I am amazing.
Innovative for
Thank you for
sure.
noticing.
Well, and that was the pretty it was a fairly popular line too, was it, when it first came out? Like
It was very popular, but the
yeah,
cards did not sell.
really.
No,
Uh
because it took me a while to realize I really went out and did a little bit of research myself to watch women buy cards, and I saw that they would love my cards and laugh and then buy "I love you, sweetheart." So
mm,
I had to be very careful that the card was somewhere in between, a little biting, but also the joke was on the woman too. So
yeah.
those two things, I was able to put a very big selling line together, but it took a while.
Mm,
And then what happened was, because it was a feminist greeting card, I got a lot of publicity. I was on the Today Show with Ms. Liz as an animated character. I did that. We were on the Today Show like, oh, I don't know, 10 times
yeah.
together.
Wow.
And then Helen Gurley Brown bought it as a greeting card, as a comic strip in
Mm,
Cosmopolitan magazine. So I got a lot of publicity,
yeah.
and and but it was after 9 years, I
Wow.
was ready to do something else.
Wow. Well, the fact like I mean Cosmo must have been an interesting experience because that magazine is such a kind of cultural touchstone at that time period, especially. Um, yeah, to like it seems like a good marriage, I guess, of the a woman specific
Yeah.
magazine to
I
to
was
bring the
really
character.
surprised that Helen Gurley Brown went for it. They had
Mm,
never done a comic strip. In fact, I
really?
called Cosmo, Cosmopolitan. I called them and said, "Hi, I have a comic strip called Miss," and they said, "We don't do comics," and they
Huh.
hung up. So I sent like I guess about 8 or 9 strips, and I addressed it to Helen Gurley Brown.
Mm.
And the next day, they
Wow.
called, said she wants all of them. So that's how I got into Cosmopolitan.
Wow.
You can't believe the first person that, the receptionist rejected me.
Mm.
We don't do them, but they did them. They did my comic strip. It was the only one that I think, I don't know about today. I haven't been reading it, but I thought it was really quite uh, interesting that Ms. Liz and the Cosmo girl were kind of one of the same in a way.
Mm.
The Cosmo girl was very sexy
Hmm.
and very aggressive with men.
Hmm.
And Ms. Liz, because of her name, she wasn't quite as out there as the Cosmo girl.
Mm. Well, even just glancing at the like when I was getting ready to chat with you, reading one or two of the strips, I love the one about like just hearing about your history with your mother and everything. It just that was like one single strip that I read that was like about Miss Liz talking to her mom who's just nothing was good enough and complaining and stuff. So I thought it was like a nice to get to know some insight into your story and then see some of the strips. It's nice to see
Yeah,
what sort of informed
the
it.
mom was gold.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a mind. That's a mind that never, or a well that never ran dry. Huh? How did your own mother feel about that? Did she read those and have an opinion? That probably wasn't a positive one.
She had a good sense of humor about it.
Oh, good.
I don't know if she will. I'm writing my autobiography now, so she just passed.
Mm. I'm sorry
I
to
don't
hear
know if she would have the same good nature about it
that.
in my autobiography, but I don't know.
Well,
I think she was happy that there was some success there,
good.
and and a lot of surprise. I mean, she really expected nothing from me.
Mm.
So anything was good, especially, going on the Today Show and all that. I think she was really like, wait a second, that was supposed to be the smart one. How did the dummy get this, you know?
Yeah, well, I think the dummy did pretty good.
Thank
You
you.
know, for
For a
sure.
dummy, right?
Yeah, well, not at all, but that's yeah. Well, I mean, there's something interesting about the biography, you know, the autobiography, and that it's your story, right? And the some people may not like how they are depicted in your story, but it's your story, and you kind of can't take that away from people.
Yeah.
But you know, it's just an interesting Rashomon style sort of memory versus reality kind of thing, depending on. I mean,
Yeah.
everyone's the star of their own story, but you know, when you see yourself depicted in someone else's, it's not always that positive, and that's hard to rectify or reckon with sometimes.
Yeah. I've been working on this autobiography. It's called My Comic Life. I've been working on it for, I it's probably about 110 years. It
Mhm.
feels, and,
This is before you were born.
I mean, had I written it and just added a couple of panels, but I'm doing it as a graphic novel.
Oh, lovely.
So it is, and I decided to do it was during COVID. I said, well, what perfect time,
Mm,
to be writing and drawing. But I I uh I realized that I could do it as a graphic novel, so why not?
mm,
Rather than just a story and with a couple panels.
mm.
And I'm kind of glad that I've done it as a graphic novel, but at the same time, it's taken so long and
No,
every day, just to lay out a page and, it's a lot. But
yeah.
I'm nearing the end of the first half. I had to do it in two sections
Mm.
because it's too much. I mean, I'm old now and there was a lot going on and being at Marvel and DC,
Mm.
there's talking about that and going through the childhood. And I think getting back to Betty and Veronica about being humiliated, I think that being brought up as somebody who is the second girl, I think that being the second girl was not a great thing either.
Mm.
So quickly, my father was a traveling salesman. And I think my mother being by herself with one girl was enough. And then there's another girl.
Hmm.
And then, being given that title, um, uh, I think that this book is inspirational for girls who
Yeah.
were given not the same advantages as boys for sure,
Hmm.
but just to be put in a box.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
to
Well,
show that you can succeed and
that
through all these obstacles.
mm. Well, it seems to me like just because a lot of your work and stuff you worked on in the past was sort of like slice of life stories about, you know, the day-to-day life that your autobiography, you know, would fit within the style of the work you've done itself previously. So kind of like seems like a really cool way to approach that.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you. I'm excited about it.
Yeah. Well, getting to Marvel was like now that you had this sort of career with the strip and the cards, was that enough in a portfolio to bring to a place like that? Like how'd you get into Marvel?
Oh, well, I got into Marvel through DC.
Oh,
Well,
you started DC. I thought it was the other way around. Sorry. So
I started at DC
okay.
and with Jeanette Codd hired me after Ms. Liz.
Hmm.
I think she saw Ms. Liz on the Today Show, and so that was an opening.
Hmm.
And it was at a time where the market for comics was 95% boys.
Hmm.
Today, it's 50-50.
Hmm.
So at that time, there was this huge opening for girls to read comics. The only comics really out there for girls was Betty and Veronica.
Hmm.
So she wanted me to do a comic for girls, and they had to own the character. All my characters are owned by either Marvel or DC.
Yeah.
Uh, the so I did Angel Love, and Jeanette was very welcoming and really wanted to break into the girls' market. And so I came at the perfect time. And that's when, I did Angel Love. And after, I don't know how many, nine, I think it was 9 comics. It was drugs, sex, and rock and roll. And boy, did that make a splash.
Mhm.
I had no idea that it was going to be, um, so reviewed. And I got a terrible review the
Mhm.
first time that I was going to ruin the industry. And the comic code was not
God.
on there. And it was,
Ugh.
abortion. It was about sex, and it was about everything that, you know, was not in comics for girls, especially. It's a big leap from Betty and Veronica.
Mhm.
So, but what happened was I got a lot of love from the fans, from girls saying, "Oh, Angel's just like me. Angel's my best friend. I love you, Angel." It-
Mhm.
Amazing letters that are now at Washington University. That's where my archive is.
Oh, nice. That's
All
lovely.
those letters are there. I'm so glad that they're being preserved because, in the move, God knows what I would have done with half of them.
It's so wild what people like. It's funny that even in the era before the internet, where like it was so easy to put your stupid opinion on for everyone to see, that like it was still an easy way for people to write you or letters pages or whatever to get it out there. But like the idea that like because it's a female centric character dealing with female centric issues, it's such a wild thing that like is going to destroy the comic industry. When like in hero comics you got women being murdered and shoved in refrigerators or people being addicted
And
to
blood,
drugs
I
and
know.
blood and like
Yeah,
it's
like it's okay.
yeah, yeah,
And they've
yeah.
got gigantic boobs,
Mm,
Yeah. But that was and I also got a lot of letters from teachers who were teaching in the inner school and saying, "Thank you for writing something that my kids really understand and relate to." So that was all good. It was both. It was great because it broke uh, a I don't know I don't really know what's going on at DC and Marvel today, but at that time it really broke a lot of barriers and
yeah,
for girls,
yeah.
and it
No,
was it was fun. Yeah.
I never realized how because I remember seeing like just coming across the books here and there as a kid, you're looking through old stacks of comics or whatever. And I don't know if I ever cracked one as much as I should have because looking back on what the material was, it was such a, you're right. Like it really, really broached into a lot of subjects that at that time period you certainly didn't see it broached. And looking at photos of yourself around the time period, I'm assuming that the inspiration for her design was based on you as well, somewhat.
Somehow always, yeah, yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
I guess so. Yeah,
The
it's
hell of a coincidence, if
it's
not.
funny. It comes in. Even some of the names in there that I used, I never changed. I thought, oh, maybe I should have changed them, but it's already. It just becomes part of the story,
Mm,
and then I always think, well, maybe I'll change it, and then I never do.
mhm. And then like go so did when you because Angel Love only had 9 issues, was that all they wanted, or was it just that the other opportunities came up and you moved on, or how come it ended the
If they wanted Angel Love, I would still be doing Angel Love today.
no, really?
I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And no, no, it was no, you are over. And it was very upsetting.
Yeah.
I didn't know that this was a limited series.
Hmm.
I thought I was just going to continue on forever, but it got such strong reactions from men. Thank
Mm.
you.
Yeah.
It
No,
was,
yeah. Yeah.
I mean, Jeanette Kahn was wonderful. She was all for it. My editor was Karen Berger. She was really very supportive, but they were really frightened that it was going to destroy the comic industry. And I did get some irate letters from parents, like who bought it thinking they were going to read about Betty and Veronica. Instead,
Mm.
they're reading about abortion.
Yeah.
So I guess that must have been a shock.
Yeah, maybe so. But I don't know. Like, yeah, I guess. To me, it's just one of those things. Like, I find it's still a debate today where it's like, if the thing is not for you, then it's not for you. Just leave it. You don't need to tear it down. Let it exist. Just don't. You don't need to participate in it.
Well, wouldn't that be
I
wonderful
know,
if
wouldn't
that
it?
really happened to even today? I mean, look what's going on today. Let's
Oh
not
yeah,
even look at it. But it's yeah, you do your thing and I do mine. I was not in this world to live up to your expectations, and what was that? Was that the 60s thing?
yeah.
And, you know, I am I and you are you,
Hmm.
blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, I often say that the most of the world's problems have to do with people that have a lot of opinions about things that have nothing to do with them. It's like just
Yeah,
let it be, let it go over there.
let it
Uh,
be.
yeah,
Yes.
it's like, and the issues that people like harp on or become such big focal points are
Would it
like,
be wonderful if all the world were like you and me?
well, yeah, I agree. I agree,
Or is it you and
100%.
I? Is
Yeah,
it is it you? Anyway, it's so long ago. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That's well, like when that ended, was Marvel kind of interested in what you were doing with DC and ready to scoop you up, or was it also you need to sell?
No, I
No.
think Marvel was horrified
Oh, really? Okay.
at what was going on with DC. Of course, they're competitors, so
Yes.
at that time they were, I don't know how I wasn't in the inner workings of the
Hmm.
way they work with each other, but I knew they were competitors. But no, what happened was uh, Gary Cohn, who did um, Blue Devil
Hmm.
and Amethyst for DC Comics. And I got to be very good friends. And he called me one morning and he said, Foxy Fox, God, I'm going to forget the name of it, but he says, you draw and I write. And so we worked on this comic that that we were going to I think we were going to go to DC or Marvel. I don't know where we were going, but we got very involved in doing these animals that actually were so much fun. It's Kingdom, the high fashion forest is what it is. And it was all these animals, which is really wonderful. It would be wonderful today too. But, as I say, when you work with a creative person, you have such a good time putting it together, and then you show it to one person. And if they don't like it, that's it.
Yeah.
You need somebody who knows how to sell. And it takes about 20 rejections before you get somebody who says yes.
Yeah.
And so Gary and I what happened is did we did all the characters, we did Bibles, we did ideas for the first 5 comics. We really worked on it. And then we flew to Chicago for
Mhm.
the convention. And lo and behold, we came across Tom DeFalco, who was looking at portfolios. And there's a big line. And we walked over and said, we have this product we'd like to show you. So he says, oh, well, meet me at the hotel at 6 o'clock and at the coffee shop. So there we were with our project, so excited to show it. This was going to be the new best thing. And he looked at it for, I guess, about 45 seconds, maybe not even that long. And he handed it back. He said, this is the weirdest thing I've ever seen. Now, weird is a good thing, but this was
Yeah.
not weird in a good way. This was
Okay.
weird in a way like you've got to be kidding.
Mhm.
So we took our project and went to the bar and but as Tom was leaving, it was a very quick meeting. I
Mhm.
said to him, is Marvel going to do any comics for girls? And he looked around. He says, well, call me in the city, which is what I did. And I called him about once a month and he met with me. And I pitched so many projects to him. One I did with Trina Robbins that I thought how he couldn't possibly reject Trina and me because we were the only girls who were doing mainstream comics,
Mhm.
writing and drawing. And we had this great idea for Sunny and Dawn. One lived on the East Coast, one lived on the West Coast. Another project that's, sitting around. I wish somebody
Mhm.
would sell it.
Yeah.
And he was not interested. So this was about, I don't know how many times I pitched. And finally I said, "Oh, I get it, I get it, I get it. No, girls, and thanks for seeing me.
Yeah.
But I get it." And he says, "No, no, no. I'm actually thinking of doing it was actually a graphic novel, but they weren't called graphic novels. They were still called comics.
Hmm.
Graphic novels became much more the term later on.
Yeah. It's a way to
But
elevate it, make it seem
it
like it
was
was, yeah.
it was a 48-page comic for the 21 and over girls. And that's when I did Yuppies from Hell.
Hmm.
Are you familiar with that comic?
Yes, yeah, mostly through my research of talking with you, but I do vaguely remember when I was younger seeing spotlights on it and a few things, and I thought it was pretty interesting. It's very fun.
That was it was the most fun because I would I lived in New York. I grabbed a pencil and paper and I eavesdropped all over the city.
Mhm.
And I got these, even one little line can make a whole comic, like listening to these two guys talk. Eavesdropping, I have to write a book on the art of eavesdropping because I was so good at it. I'd sit at a table and just lean back and listen to conversations, or in Central Park, I would just hear all these lines. And I ran across this one guy who was crying because his kid did not get into the United Nations school. The kid
Okay.
was 3 years old. I know. A failure in your dad's eyes at 9 years old.
Wow.
It was horrible.
Oh
And so
God.
I started this, the one of the main characters was this, it was him who was so upset about his kid not getting in. And there was a long line of women, of pregnant women, who had these phones in their bellies so the kids would start doing math and English in utero,
Yeah. Yeah.
is that what it's called? Yeah,
Utero, yeah.
utero. Thank you.
Yeah.
And so there they are, and you see this woman with her glasses down saying to this couple, Bob and Carol, who were the typical yuppies.
Mm.
And she's looking and say, "I'm afraid the pre-birth math was not up to par, but the pre-birth English, she can get in." Anyway, so they're like, "Oh, we'll have a tutor. We'll get a private tutor." So anyway, the kid ends up getting in, which was thrilling to the parents.
It's,
So I
it's
have,
well, it's such a great like just flipping through the ones that are available on your website if you have the spots that I could read through. It's such a great I guess like a cornerstone of that sort of that era, that suit, big suitcase, phone, business person with all these ridiculous worries about, housing markets and this and that. Like it very much strikes me as what I recall of that era growing up myself, and what was definitely the focal point of popular culture at the time. Like, and it
well,
was a great
when I
skewering of it.
started Yuppies from Hell, people were not on cell phones. There were a few,
Hmm.
but it wasn't like the way it is today. Of course, everybody's on their cell phone.
Hmm.
And that was a little segment I put in Yuppies from Hell where these two people were on their cell phones passing each other on the street and saying, "Well, we must get together soon." Yes, and, missing each other.
Hmm.
But that it was unusual for people to be on cell phones. And then it was probably a year later, I was back in the city because I had moved upstate, I think, at the time. And I came into the city and I heard everybody was talking. I thought like I would pass people and I'd see their mouth move. I thought everybody was talking to me. And then I realized everybody's, on their phone. It was a totally different environment.
Hmm.
But when I was doing Yuppies, um, there people weren't on the phone. They were actually communicating. Like
Mm,
people would be sitting at a table talking to each other, not on their phones.
yeah.
And so I remember hearing this guy saying, I think my relationship with what's her name is really getting serious.
Hmm.
So this was like gold. The guy doesn't know her name, and he's nervous about a serious relationship. And that's when Julie came, of course, who only wants to get married. So the conflict between the two of them was, I don't know how many segments about those two, that they were, that it was all from that one line. So you can get a whole story just from one line,
Oh
or
yeah.
a whole story from one visual of watching this man cry. And you take it from there, and that's why New York City was so wonderful for all this inspiration.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. Yeah, and just seeing some of the books you worked on for Marvel as well, like a lot of, I mean, the Sweet 16 thing was pretty interesting. It's like a Roman era teen comic, was it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was so
that
much fun.
that looked like a blast. And then of course going back even further to I'm getting back to where I had a list here.
Barbie, Barbie,
Barbie,
Barbie,
yeah.
Barbie.
Yeah. And then some of the Disney stuff. So like working on those sort of properties must have been interesting because I've talked to a few folks that have done adaptations of or like done X-Files comics or other things and just the camp from the people making the show that have the input in the making of the comic always seems like a very interesting juxtaposition.
Well, I always had an editor in between me,
Mm.
in between the uh, Mattel, who owned Barbie, and Hildy Mesnick was my editor, and then there was um, Disney, of course, who were really so involved in those characters. They were making sure you didn't do or say anything out of line, and Barbie too.
Mm.
Uh, but I did 65 Barbie comics,
Mm.
and again, there I am in New York, and Barbie was allowed to be every month. She could have any career, and she could live anywhere. So the world was open.
Wow.
And we went to a Mattel meeting, and they said that the way the Marvel writers and artists did Barbie was what they wanted all their licensees to be like.
Wow.
And that was a lot of it had to do with Hildy Mesnick, who was passionate about Barbie. And we all were. Here was a group of women who never had an opportunity to work for Marvel Comics. And we're all working for Marvel. Yay. It's so
Yeah.
exciting. And we went to comic conventions, and it was, and Barbie did very well. Every month we had more and more readers, and a lot of girls writing to Barbie, and it was a great time, a wonderful time. And then the girls line continued. Tom was very involved in getting the girls line going. So then he got Disney to give us, of course, now Disney owns Marvel.
Yeah, I know.
Uh, But at the time we were doing Beauty and the Beast and Pocahontas, and so I did the Beauty and the Beast, and loved doing Beauty and the Beast. Loved Belle. I mean, all these characters were just so in my heart, and that's all I thought about were
Oh.
Barbie and Belle and Betty and Veronica and Pocahontas. I did. So it was great. And the differences between all of those characters,
Mm.
like Barbie couldn't make mistakes, and Betty could make lots of them, but not as many as Veronica. There's little subtle differences with all those girls.
Yeah. I'd be remiss as a '90s kid not to mention that you worked on the New Kids on the Block comic. That must have been, must have been. I actually had some of those as a kid. I'm not sure where they came from, but I remember when I saw that you worked on them, I was like, oh crap, I do have some of her books somewhere. I'm not sure if they're still in my parents' basement somewhere, but
Yeah,
that must have been because I mean that was such a huge thing at the time to work on like a licensed property with those
yeah,
people.
it
Must have
was.
been.
It was uh, Sid Jacobson was the editor, and he was the one that I worked on with Sweet 16.
Mhm.
and Barbie. Actually, I started working with him. So I loved working with him. And at the time, Jerry Kraft was working with me. He and he loved New Kids on the Block, and he
Yeah,
wanted to do New Kids on the Block.
really. He's the passionate. Wow.
So he did the sketches of New Kids, and I did the writing, and then we sent them off, and it was okay. I mean, it wasn't they weren't my it wasn't my favorite comic to do.
Well, I'd imagine you have certain things that you need to fit it into. Like, do they say this is the personality of this character, that character? Do they leave that really up to you to do whatever you want with them and just have them kind of look like the guys in the
I
band?
just see them as a mass of one guy, and this sounds terrible.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. I mean, most boy bands kind of are depicted that way, you know. I guess
Yeah,
they have their bad boy, the guy that has an earring or whatever, and then like or something like that. But
yeah.
yeah, but
I guess if I were like 8 or 9 or 10, I would have been choosing the one like with, my Beatle. I always loved John Lennon.
mm,
You choose them as a
fair
kid, but as
enough, yeah.
a writer who's old, you're like, who are these kids?
Yeah. That's hilarious. Yeah, well, like I guess moving on to getting closer to where we're at today, you do a lot of education about graphic novels, and you've written a book about how to make your own. Um,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
well, I guess like, do you feel like getting more information about like empowering people and not just making it like a gender thing, but with girls or whoever to be able to kind of get out there and tell their own stories and do their own thing was so important to you that it was something you need to pass the information on, or is it just a matter of celebrating the art form or somewhere in between?
I, I I moved upstate and the librarian called me and asked me if I would teach how to do graphic novels to teens. And I was thrilled. I mean, I was spending a lot of time by myself upstate. I had just adopted a kid.
Oh,
So actually, I was spending a lot of time with my kid. And uh, but it was very solitary. I mean, I
mm.
wasn't, I had the inspiration was not there anymore because I was living upstate where, uh, you know, eavesdropping on deer and bunnies and birds.
Yeah,
You didn't get the same dialogue.
not quite the inspiration you're getting before.
No, I did not speak deer.
Yeah.
Um, so well, she asked me if I would be interested in doing that. I said, absolutely. So I did a lesson plan and I called the librarian. Um, Actually, this woman was on the board of directors. So I called the librarian to schedule time and I said to her, I said, I can't do more than 15 teens. And she laughed at me. She says, if we get 5 teens, she might have said three, into our library, I will, I don't know what she said, do the jig,
Yeah.
or I don't know what she said, something
Yeah.
like she'll do something outrageous. And so there they were, 15 teens in the library waiting for me to come in.
Wow.
And I had never taught before. And I had my lesson plan for I was going to do 6 Thursdays at, I think, 7 to 8:30. And within the first 15 minutes, I had gone through my entire
Oh no.
six, and I was standing there sweating. And so I looked around, I saw these kids were really bored
Mhm.
and they were all sketching. So I started going around and looking at what they were doing and talking about it, holding it up, and then it just happened
Mm,
very organically on how I started teaching.
mm.
And I actually learned from, this is not something unusual. It's from the King and I that you learn from your students. And that's what I did. I really learned from my students. And I've been teaching all over the country, loving it. My favorite is going to these schools with these kids that are underprivileged in these terrible, they just have no art. The teachers are trying to get them to take these tests
Mm.
that they do terribly in, and all this creativity in these inner school systems. So I would go in there and teach these kids, and they were wonderful. And some of the teachers said that a kid that never spoke got up in front of the class and showed his work. So I love teaching. I love going into the schools. So that's been a secondary education for me. And that's how I wrote the book, just taking notes about teaching. And I have so much more now. I'm going to have to update that book.
Oh
There's so
yeah.
much more I want to write now. And I'm going to do that when I finish my autobiography in 2095.
Well, I look forward to reading it in 2095. Well, yeah, no, I mean, I think the book itself is super cool from what I've read online and seen from that you've released on it. And
It's really it's I would say 9-year-old till, 109.
mhm,
It's very, it's very, it breaks things apart. And the main thing is teaching them how to, or one of the main things is teaching how to plot by color code.
mhm,
Because when I worked for DC, after the initial of acceptance of the character Angel Love and the bio of Angel Love, I was stuck. I did not know how to plot.
mhm.
And so uh, Paul Levitz and Dick Giordano, I always get his name, Dick Giordano.
I
Anyway, the two of them taught me how to plot by color code, which was the greatest lesson of my life. So I
really,
had that in the book.
wow, okay. I've had Paul on the show before, and he's an interesting guy. Um, and I see Stan Lee, of course, had a blurb too, so that was nice to see the support from him as well. Did you have a relationship with him at all? Like any?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
awesome.
A relationship. Should I start a rumor?
Oh no, sure. Didn't
Why not?
necessarily mean it that way. I guess so. Yeah, hey, why not? It helps sell some
Why
books,
not? It will
Yeah,
elevate
yeah.
me.
That's right. That autobiography will
No,
fly off the shelf now.
the only relationship I had with him was I'd see him at Comic Con, the comic parties and at Marvel
Mhm.
parties and Comic Cons and stuff like that. He was a wonderful, wonderful man, very funny. He said to me, he loved Yuppies from Hell. He said, "Let's do a syndicated strip of that." I said, "Oh, okay." And he said to me, he says, "Just send it to me. I have been rejected at every um uh what are they called? What is it? I'm blanking on it,
It's
but
okay.
he said he's been rejected, and so he wasn't very encouraging to send a comic strip to. Rejected at every syndicate, every
All right,
comic.
I see. Yeah.
He says, send it to me, and I didn't, and that's still something I think about. Should I have done that? But I didn't. And but he was wonderful. He was very
Mhm.
funny and very warm, and uh, it's, I feel sad about what happened to him at the end. There was all this, you know, the story.
Yeah, there's a documentary coming out about it.
Yeah, he was
That I
kind of
just
propped up in these conventions. I just felt very sorry that that's the way his life ended. But
yeah.
maybe
It
he,
I talked to someone that it was at a con with him years ago that told me a similar story, just like about how the guy that was sort of his handler was sort of seemingly really taking advantage of him and kind of pushing him a lot more than he should be at his age. And it sounded really sad and I kind of followed it away of being like, well, maybe it was just he saw that, whatever. And then I saw some clips of this documentary that's coming out that the guy was kickstarting. And I was like, oh man, like to actually see footage of what you had described to you was very eye-opening and sad. And it's kind of a bigger conversation about, getting older and having, especially if you're someone of some kind of clout in the media and how it's easy for people to take advantage of you and get more money out of the out of things. Yeah, it's rough. So, but
yeah,
I'm at least it may open up some conversations and maybe have people be more aware of that this is a possibility for aging creators and perhaps prevent it from happening again. So that would be nice.
That would be nice, but hope springs eternal. There's always good people.
It sure does. You mentioned the book's coming out, or the autobiography you're working on is 2095. But the first half, are you doing it in two parts, or is it one complete book when it's done, or is it going to come out in a part one and part two?
It's in two parts.
Okay.
Because it's in graphic novel form. If it were just as a book, as a written book, it would be in one part. But because the pictures are so important, and I have photographs, and I'm just throwing everything but the kitchen sink in there.
Oh, well, I can't.
It's reading. I'm very happy with it right now,
Awesome.
but I really want to finish the first half.
But I can't wait to read it. It sounds awesome. I'll definitely
Thank you.
put me down as your number one customer.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thanks so much for being on the show, Barbara. This is a real joy. I really, really love talking to you.
Well, it was great talking to you.
Oh, thanks again. You have yourself a great day.
And thank you for inviting me.
Oh, anytime.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. There you have it, my chat with Barbara Slate. What a great conversation. What an amazing talk. And I was very, very happy to chat with her about her life and her career. And I very much am looking forward to that new book. I'm hoping it's not 2090 when it comes out. But when it does, the first part come out, I certainly will be grabbing my copy. And I will put that information out here so you can grab one too. Because you won't want to miss it. I feel like Barbara is a real innovator and not one that gets mentioned as much as should be when it comes to some of the real innovators in the comic industry, because she did some amazing work and stuff that should be recognized for what it gave to comics and what it started, and the things we do today because of the things that she had done then. We run or we walk because she ran, kind of thing. So big thanks to Barbara for being on the show. Hopefully she had as much fun as I did doing this conversation, and hopefully you did listening to it. So it was a great chat and a great time. So be sure to tune in hopefully 1 week's time. We have another episode. We got a few more lined up now, so we should be back on track. But tune in then for a new episode. Not sure who that is, just in case it doesn't pan out the way it's expected. I try not to set the expectations high, just in case I have to swap or change or edit, who the next guest is. Until I have those recorded, I don't normally announce it. But you can check in on social media. I'll have that announced. And in the meantime, stay safe, have fun, and go read some comics by Barbara Slate. They're well worth it. The Graphic Histories Podcast is a proud partner of the United Federation of Podcasts.